So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the NIH funding panel session. My name is Zeynep Erim. I'm a program director at the NIBIB. I manage the training portfolio at NIBIB, and I always have this problem where I'm so short the screen is keeping me from seeing the rest of you. So let me try and do this. So we have a panel today that is made up of partly NIH program directors and partly PIs who have been successful in getting NIH grants. So what we're trying to do is to give you a view from both sides of the divide, and some of the some of the PIs also have review experience, so they can also speak to that part of the NIH application process as well. So let's see. We have these program directors listed there. I'm not going to go through everybody, but you can see our names in the name tags as well. So what we're going to do is start with Chris Kelly. She's going to give an overview of the NIH and the NIBIB. And then I'm going to talk about the training mechanisms that NIBIB uses and some of them NIH uses to fund early career junior investigators and trainees. And we're both from the NIBIB, so that's the Institute of Engineering. So you see that that point of view. And then we have Dr. Daofan Chan from NINDS. So he's going to speak from the point of view of a categorical NIH institute where you as biomedical engineers may go to them for funding of applications where technology is applied rather than developed. So, and then we're going to go around and the PIs will briefly introduce themselves so that you know where they're coming from, and they're going to talk a little bit about their history with the NIH. And then we want to leave a lot of room for your questions and answers, and we want to keep everything very informal, and you can just get up and ask your questions. It's a small enough room that we will hear everybody. And there are also cards that have been passed out, so you can pass them on to Michelle, and I think they're going to go around, collect any questions that maybe you don't want to voice, but you just want to jot down, so we can answer them that way as well. We have these presentations right now, 3 presentations. We'll be happy to email them to you if you send us your email, or just send us an email. We also have some material from NIBIB in the back. I kind of think they're all gone, but NIBIB does have a booth downstairs or upstairs this time. Booth 717, so we have more information there. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Dr. Chris Kelly to speak to us about the NIH and the NIBIB.
Great. Thanks, Zeynep. I thought before I'd start, I'd ask a few questions of the audience, just so I know kind of who's here and where at what stage of your career you're at. So could you raise your hand if you've ever had an NIH grant? Okay, so maybe half, I don't know, a third. Could you raise your hand if you've ever had an NIH R21 grant? Okay, so hopefully my presentation will be good for everybody here. It's more oriented towards early stage investigators than late stage, because I figured that would mostly be the audience. So the title of my talk is Understanding the NIH and even more specifically the NIBIB. So the NIH has a this slide shows what the NIH mission is, which is extremely broad. It's the NIH is the steward of medical and behavioral. Oh, it didn't change up there. Huh. Oh, I see. Okay, split. So so the NIH is the steward of medical and behavioral research for the nation. Its mission is science in pursuit of fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to extend healthy life and reduce the burden of illness and disability. The NIH is a big place, and it consists of 27 different institutes and centers at this point. Our institute, the National Institute for Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, is actually the newest institute at NIH, and we are now 17 years old from when we were signed into law by President Clinton. And each of the institutes have different missions, different cultures, and different budgets. It's almost like we call the institutes at NIH Silos, although we try hard to work across the institutes. And it's getting better. I've been at NIH for 30 years now, and it's gotten much better, but there still are quite the silos. And this pie chart shows that with the FY16 NIH budget of $32 billion, you can see how it's distributed, with the big players being the NCI, the NIAID, Heart, Lung, and Blood, General Medicine, DK, et cetera. And then if you look, does this work? No.
It works. Yes.
Oh, it is working over there, but not on my screen. Okay, the NIBIB is this little tiny little slice there. And our budget in FY16 was about $351 million. When the Institute started, we were about $300 million, so we haven't really grown that much in budget over the years, unfortunately, because we started actually at the end of the doubling of the NIH budget, so we've been pretty flat. So what does NIBIB do with its $350 million? Our mission is to improve health by leading the development and accelerating the application of biomedical technology. So we're all about technology development. We are not focused on any particular disease or organ system, as most of the institute at NIH are. We are all about developing imaging and bioengineering technologies. And we're very committed to integrating the physical, life, and computer sciences with engineering to advance both basic research and medical care. And we do that through funding grants, cooperative agreements, and contracts to perform research and development of new biomedical imaging and bioengineering technologies, or research that enhances existing imaging and biomedical technologies to improve the detection, monitoring, treatment of patients to improve human health. This is a list of all the scientific areas program areas that we have in the Institute. So each one is a separate program, has a separate program director who manages and leads the program. You can see our scope is very wide with both imaging and bioengineering programs. We do try to evolve over time by looking at the new applications that are coming in, by looking at the literature, by attending scientific meetings, and look for new areas or emerging areas where we think we should put our money and start new programs. So the two that I outlined here are immunoengineering and synthetic biology, which immunoengineering we just started a few months ago, and synthetic biology we started maybe 6 months ago. We offer funding opportunities for scientists at every stage of their career, from graduate to medical school students all the way up to senior scientists, senior investigators. On the right-hand side are most of the mechanisms for fellowships and training grants and career development awards, which Zeynep's going to talk about, so I won't go into that. But on the left-hand side, I'll just say a little bit about research project grants, R01s, small grants, R03s, and exploratory developmental grants, R21s, which are kind of the bread and butter grant mechanisms that are used across the NIH. So for the R01, I think most of you are probably familiar with it. It's it's a very circumscribed research project. The budget is as appropriate, basically. Probably the average budget now is about $400,000 a year. The projects can be 4 to 5 years. They're renewable, and you get extra points if you're a new investigator or an early stage investigator. That is, whatever our pay line is, you get 5 percentile points above that as your pay line. And then we support R03 grants, which are small research projects. They include, pilot and feasibility studies, secondary analysis of existing data, and development of research methodologies and new technologies. Those are really small. They're $50K a year for 2 years. They're not renewable. You get no points for being a new investigator or an early stage investigator, no extra points. And the last of the most popular grant mechanisms is the R21, which are exploratory and developmental research grants that where we support early and conceptual stage ideas that may lead to breakthroughs in the field. They're $275,000 over the course of 2 years, and again, they're not renewable. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the NIBIB's new R21 policy because it has changed quite a bit. We've dropped out of the parent R21 FoA, and we've dropped out of the exploratory bioengineering research grant FoA, and we've created our own R21 NIBIB FoA. And the reason is because we were finding that the R21s were not what they were intended to be originally. They were coming in as small R01s with lots of preliminary data, and we really wanted to use the mechanism for very exploratory research projects that didn't have preliminary data. So we have one FoA out now for the R21s where we say that you cannot have any preliminary data. That they have to be truly exploratory or developmental. They're 2-year grants like any R21 over $250K over 2 years. I put down the PAR number here, but well, if you get the slides, then you'll have it. Otherwise, you can just Google it. And as I said before, we no longer participate in the parents. We also have a new R21 FoA that we call the NIBIB Trailblazer. And this is specifically for new investigators and early stage investigators. We started this last year. It has the regular receipt dates. It's a little different than other R21s in that there are 3-year grants and it's $400,000 in direct costs over the 3 years. Here we say no preliminary data are required again. We emphasize this with the reviewers when they review it, so they don't ding people for not having preliminary data for an R21 because the other NIH R21 applications do. We strongly recommend applications from underrepresented groups. And again, they're early stage developmental ideas that may or may not work. They're high risk, high reward projects. So if you're not sure of what a new investigator, early stage investigator is, a new investigator is a PI who has not previously competed successfully as a PI for a significant independent NIH research grant, and that basically means an R01. If you've never had an R01, then you qualify as a new investigator or an early stage investigator. On top of that, an early stage investigator has to be within 10 years of the terminal degree or clinical residency training. So how do you get an NIH grant if you've never had one? This is my advice. Number one, do your homework. This is a URL for a website on the NIH website, and it tells you all about all the different types of the grant mechanisms, how to apply, all of the basics for how to write an NIH grant. And once you've done that homework, and you've developed an idea of your own that you want to submit, talk to your program director at NIH. Try to find out, go to the websites, on our website that has all the programs and who the program director is. And I think it's essential that you talk to your program director and get advice and guidance. Because if you're inexperienced, they'll be able to help you. I mean, that's their job, is to help you. So a lot of people don't take advantage of this, but it's like free consulting. I highly recommend everybody to contact their program director. They'll be able to tell you things like, they can look at your specific aims and tell you, whether they're starring specific aims. They can tell you whether it's a high priority area for the institute, because if it's not, then don't bother sending it there. They can tell you what study section your grant application should go to be reviewed. And then, of course, after the review, they can mentor you on, they attend the study section so they can get a better idea than just maybe your summary statement about what the major concerns were at the review. So if I say it a number of times, it's because that you should contact your program director. It's because it's extremely important, and a lot of people do not. So there's investigator-initiated grant applications, and there's grant applications that you can submit in response to a specific funding opportunity announcement. The investigator-initiated grants are to the parent FoAs, so those are for R01s, R21s, R03s. Those are your ideas. Send them in. The majority of the applications we receive at NIH are investigator-initiated that come in through the parent. If there happens to be a specific solicitation from an institute and your application fits that, then certainly you can apply to that, but don't feel like you have to fit into any specific FoA that we solicit applications for. And just to give you an idea of solicited applications that are FoAs that are currently open in the NIBIB, we have one in synthetic biology because, of course, that's a new program that I told you we're trying to grow. We have a second one in point-of-care technologies and a third one in multi-scale modeling. And I can't go into detail because of the time, but you can find all this information on our website. And if your application fits in there, great. Contact the program director and talk to them about what they're looking for. So all of the institutes at NIH now participate in trans-NIH programs through the Common Fund. And this is just a diagram of all of the Common Fund programs that there are. Some of them end, some of them continue. There's always solicitations out there for all of these programs. So keep an eye on these to see if anything fits your area of research. And these are 4 of the Common Fund initiatives that don't have any specific scientific area. There's the Transformative R01, the Transformative Research Award, the Pioneer Award, the Director's New Innovator Award, and an Early Independence Award. So I encourage you all to look those up too, and they're for people at all levels of their career, and again, no specific area of research. I was asked to include something about the 21st Century Cures Act. So this is, so there are 4 programs in the 21st Century Cures Act, including the Precision Medicine Initiative, the Brain Initiative, the Cancer Moonshot, and regenerative medicine. So I hear the alarm going off, so I can't go into detail. One more thing, the policies for human subjects research at the NIH are changing like on a daily basis. We're trying to figure out what's going on ourselves. There's, beginning with the January 25th, 2018 receipt date, human subjects applications are going to be handled differently. So make sure you look at this website to find out whether or not your application would be considered a clinical trial, because if it is, you have to submit your applications to these new specific clinical trial FoAs. And so the take-home message, become familiar with the NIH institutes that support your area of research, become familiar with the NIH for focused FoAs, which you can find in the NIH Guide to Grants and Contracts, which you should all sign up for. You get emails indicating what's new. Get to know the program director for your scientific area, very important. I hope I've said that at least 10 times. Participate in workshops and symposia if you're invited. Send program directors your CVs and say you want to participate in the review of grant applications. There's nothing better for you to learn how to write a grant than to sit in a review committee and actually review yourself. Don't work in isolation. Ask for input from your colleagues before you submit. And that's it. Thank you very much. Are you taking questions at the very end?
Actually, are there any burning questions for Chris right now? Oh. Yeah, so you can email us and we can send you the slides. So actually the best way is there's a CSR website that, again, we can send it to you, but you can contact any program director. It's really something to do with review department, but we can pass on your information to our review colleagues. And so review is handled in two different ways at NIH. Most grants are reviewed at a place called the Center for Scientific Review. So you can contact them, or at individual institutes, there are review groups that review some of the grants that come in. So from that point of view, you can contact individual program directors at the various institutes, and they can pass on the information to their review groups. So, like I said, I'm a program director at the NIBIB, and there's my email. And something you should know is, if you know anybody's name at NIH, you can contact them by this alias, their first name dot their last name at nih.gov, and you don't have to look them up otherwise. So now that we heard about the NIH and the NIBIB in general from Chris, I'm going to talk to you about the training mechanisms that are available to support the training of individuals that still need training before transitioning fully into research independence. So going through the timeline that Chris mentioned about the career spectrum, I'm going to start with the pre- and postdoctoral training levels. So at these levels, we have two types of awards. One of them is the individual fellowships, and the other one is the training grants. Individual fellowships are mainly of three types. There's the F31, which is the individual predoctoral fellowship, and this is a generic fellowship that all PhD students can apply for without any restriction, as long as their work is relevant to the NIH, of course. Then we have the F31, which is called the Individual Predoctoral Fellowships to Promote Diversity, and this is allocated only for individuals from underrepresented backgrounds. And by that, I mean individuals with disabilities, ethnic and racial minorities, and individuals from underprivileged backgrounds. So these are the two types of mechanisms we have for individuals, students working on their PhDs. For those that are working on MD PhDs, there's the F30 program, and that again comes in two flavors. One of them supports those at institutions that have MSTP programs, and one that supports people who are at institutions without MSTP programs. So the NIBIB supports only the latter. Then we have the F32 at the individual postdoctoral level. So these are all fellowships that are individual fellowships that the applicant applies directly to the NIH for. And if successful, then the award is made to the individual. With these awards, you must be a citizen or permanent resident to be able to be eligible. And you must have found a sponsor or mentor, and you must have solidified your research plan, which is a big part of the application before applying. So then we have the institutional training grants, and these are of two types. One of them is the T32, which is the Institutional Research Training Program. It supports focused research training programs for graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, and radiology residents at NIBIB. And we also have the T35, which is the short-term institutional research training program. And this is a program that provides short-term, typically over the summer, experiences, clinical or translational research experiences for graduate students. So these are at the graduate level only, not at postdoctoral level. Again, these support citizens and permanent residents. So these training awards, the institutional training grants, are really kind of large grants that mostly senior and well-established PIs apply for. So the reason I'm bringing up right now in this panel is if there are any of you in the audience that are at the pre-doc or post-doc level who are looking for funding, you can check to see which institutions have these programs, or if your institution has it, and you can apply for slots. And slots are the funding amounts that we give to the institution, and the institution allocates them to the trainees that they want to support. Also for early faculty among you, that's a good way of being involved in the research training going on at your institution. If you become a faculty mentor for these training grants, you can also have your PhD students or postdocs supported by these. Now moving a little up on the career continuum, we come to career awards, which support senior postdocs that have been maybe a few years in their postdoctoral training, and also early faculty. So these are awards that provide protected time so that the individuals get the last training that they need before being able to move on to independence. And NIBIB supports 5 main career awards. The first two, the K01 and the K25, are for people that have PhDs. The K01 is called the Research Scientist Development Award, and it's kind of a generic career award, but NIBIB uses it only for individuals who are proposing to work in a significantly new area than they have worked in before, so that they can bring their existing background into this new field and function as an interdisciplinary scientist in this new field. The K25 is really a subset of the K25 in that it also requires new area of training, but it's meant for individuals with from quantitative backgrounds like engineering, physical sciences, statistics, what have you, who have not been exposed so far to biomedical research. And again, the idea is for these individuals to get experiences in biomedical areas so that they can apply their quantitative training into areas, biomedical areas that are of interest to the NIH. Then for MDs, we have the K08 and the K23, and the K08 is more the laboratory-based award, and the K23 is a patient-oriented award, and they are both for clinicians who are in need of some protected time from their clinical duties to be able to get more experiences in research so that they can become independent investigators in their areas. And then we have the K99, about which I was asked to talk a little more in depth, so I'm going to go into that. But I just want to say a few things about the 4 K awards that I talked about. They are all for U.S. citizens or permanent residents, except for the K99, which I'm going to talk about. And IBIB supports them for 4 years now, up to 4 years, 3 or 4 years. And all of these require at least 75% effort on research training that is proposed in the K. And there are caps on the salary and research costs, and each IC has their own caps. So I have the NIBIB caps there. And there's also a cap on the indirect costs that you can request on a K award. Now, the by far most popular and most competitive of our K awards is the Pathway to Independence award, which is called the K99/R00 or the Kangaroo Award. And it's a hybrid award that has 2 phases. The first phase is the K99. It's called a mentored phase that provides postdoctoral support for 1 or 2 years. You have to be within 4 years of your PhD to be able to apply to this, or in other words, you must not have more than 4 years of postdoctoral training, to be exact. And this is the only K award that is open to individuals who are here on visas, foreign individuals who are at U.S. institutions on visas. Again, it requires at least 75% effort, and there are caps on postdoc salary as well as the facilities and administrative costs, which is the same as indirect costs, are capped at 8%. So the first phase of the K99 award is really meant to provide the little last bit of training that the individual needs before being able to acquire a faculty position and have their own independent research program. So in this first phase, the applicant or the awardee at that time is looking for a faculty position. And once they secure this faculty position, they're able to transition into the R00 independent phase. And in this independent phase, if approved, we provide up to 3 years of independent support at up to $249,000 per year and full indirect costs. So when you're in your K99 phase and you're looking for a faculty position, and in your interview you mentioned that you have a K99, it's a big boost to your faculty search, because you're coming in with your own funds, and that makes you very attractive to the institutions. So at NIBIB, we signed on to the K99 in 2007, which is when it was built. And the applications have been rising over the years, but now I think they've leveled off around 30 to 35 applications per year. NIBIB is committed to funding 5 applications per year. So far, we've funded 56 K99 applications, and 39 of these have successfully transitioned into the R00 phase, having found independent faculty positions. Of these 39, we already have 24 that have received subsequent NIH funding, 18 have held at least one R01, and 12 of them have more than one NIH grants already. So the next funding mechanism that I want to mention is the Academic Research Enhancement Award, which is also called the Area Award or the R15. It's for individuals who are at institutions that are not major recipients of NIH support. And what it aims to do is strengthen the research environment at the institution, as well as expose undergraduate and graduate students to meritorious research. Applicants cannot have any active grant when they're applying for the R15. And it provides up to $300,000 in direct costs and full F&A for up to 3 years. And even though this is really not a training grant itself, I mention it because it has been very helpful to some junior faculty to start up their research and get the preliminary data and the early work to be able to be then competitive for R01s later. So NIH has 2 websites that are chock full of helpful information for the area applications. And one of the things that you want to check is an eligibility list that gets updated every year. So your institution, actually it's an ineligibility list. So as long as your institution is not on that list, you're qualified to apply to the area award. So I want to quickly mention our team-based design project, R25, and this is a mechanism with which we support capstone design courses at BME departments. And again, because generally junior faculty are tasked with teaching design kind of courses, I want to mention it. And I'm not going to go into detail, but you can find out about it from our website. And associated with the team-based R25, I want to quickly mention that we have a debut challenge that NIBIB holds in collaboration with VentureWell, and it awards up to $65,000 in prizes to undergraduate students working on capstone design projects. And as a matter of fact, after this session, the award ceremony and presentations will be in this room right here. So please do stay. And lastly, I want to mention that increasing diversity of the workforce, of the biomedical workforce, is a big priority for both NIH and the NIBIB. And NIBIB uses 2 mechanisms very frequently to support diversity applicants. And the first one is the diversity supplements, which is a supplement we make to existing active NIH grants to support candidates from diversity backgrounds. And we have a new esteemed program, an R25 program, which supports the early preparation of individuals, of undergraduate students from diversity backgrounds in STEM fields. So this is something you may want to know. So I just want to mention that the NIBIB website is organized so that the training tab over here, if you go to the training tab, you can see that everything is organized with respect to the career levels on the side. So if you choose your career level, then you will get all the mechanisms and the contact person for them, which is generally me. And I just want to mention that NIH has multiple resources that are very helpful, and Chris mentioned some of them. And these includes sites where we have information about training grants, NIH report, which has a lot of statistics that you can look into, such as funding rates and number of applications per FoA. And also you can find active NIH grants that you may want to collaborate with through the reporter. And then we have a bunch of grant writing podcasts and webinars that you can peruse at your leisure. And like Chris mentioned, the clinical trials is a very big issue. Don't overlook it. If you're doing any kind of human subjects research, even though it doesn't look or sound like clinical trials to you, it may be a clinical trial based on the new definition. So please do look into that. So these are my slides, and so we'll have Daf and Chen talk about NINDS.
So I wanted to start with saying that you guys are lucky. You guys are lucky to have professionally to have NIBIB as a home institute of all the NIH ICs have. It's not, usual, because many professions don't have a representation at NIH. So you have one, and this is your home, and take advantage of that. And so I'm here just representing another one of the 27. And we fiscally independent. The Congress give money to each individual institute, not to overall NIH and distribute it. No, congressionally mandate budget to each one of them. So fiscally we're independent, but you can see organizationally we are working together, supporting your research collectively. So you may not limit it getting funding from NIBIB, but from other institute. So in many ways, on one hand, I kind of sympathize when Chris said that the budget of NIBIB didn't increase for many years, but on the other hand, whatever increase in other institute will go to whatever research you fit in our interest, and we feel like it's good to fund. So you've never been limited by NIBIB's budget. So I think it's important to pay attention to each institute's mission. And you look at a mission and you will know their scope. And then you look at a budget, you know how much money dedicated to that. So for instance, for NINDS, we have $1.8 billion for fiscal 17. And also you remember, now Dr. Satin told me that you folks will be interested in knowing all the initiatives, opportunities. And as you will see, as I give the example in the following example, is that you can create your own opportunity initiative. In fact, you probably couldn't possibly keep track of all the initiatives. But if you focus on your own science, you can create your own opportunities. Namely, is for instance, for our institute, 2/3 of the money actually is allocated for investigator-initiated peer review process. 2/3. Think about it, $1.2 billion from NINDS alone. And 1/4 of them each year as used for awarding new grants. So $300 million each year from NINDS goes to the new award. And mostly R1, R21s. So even more unique. Now, you need to go after R1. Everybody knows. And then I will emphasize later, if you ask questions, remind me that I don't have time to do it now, why you need to pursue R1. And one of the features is the R1 is renewable. Now, tell me any other agency in the world, foundation, there is a grant mechanism is renewable. There's only one R1. So that's why your chair, your dean wants you to get an R1. It's because of renewable. It provides a stability for the enterprise, and it's significant. But as I will maybe mention later, getting an R1, applying an R1, is really not for the money. Actually, it's for your career development. I can elaborate later if you are interested. It's really, if you think that trying to get an R1 is getting money, actually you only get half right. And the other half is really trying to, through that process, you are investing in your intellectual part of your career development. And so the real opportunity, in my view, is through this only one mechanism, which is R1 PA 16-160. 160. So you can Google it and find out. I'm maybe taking it a little bit extreme, but this is for the audience, because as we know, you all are interested in getting some NIH funding. And as I said, we have 27 IC, but these are all managed by NIH receipt referral system. If you don't know where to go, actually you can just get a grant submitted. It will end up being assigned to some institute. Now, I'm not saying you should do that. You should always do your homework, where it go. But if, let's say, you don't know, and you could let chips fall, the system will do the work. And if it's not fit NIH, it will get returned, of course. But let's hope that it will end up somewhere. And it will all be reviewed for R1s, mostly at the Center for Scientific Review. Now, it's Chris emphasized, talk to the right PO. Now, maybe some of you say, who? How could I know the right PO? And now it's very good. You have a tool that I listed here, grantome.com. You can play, if you just, now play with your iPhone, it's fine with me. Just go there, and that's a great resource. Now, you type some words in it, and it will show immediately how many grants, which institute funded, and tell you who the PO is, and which study section actually reviewed this. It's an unbelievable resource to find you. In my opinion, that all the work as a grant applicants do 10 years ago, there's no need to call NIH anymore. You can all do on your fingertips in 2 hours. So I'm not saying that, I appreciate all these information laid out, but really there are people who will get their work funded, never give me a call, and I wouldn't even know until I should see the application pop up. So I think time changes, so the way how you do this also change. So I wanted to give example. So that's the end of my presentation, but the rest I will give example to say in what way, as an engineer, make inroad into NIH and get funded, say, beyond NIBIB's budget, and get funded in some area that use engineering method. So last year, we have a conference. It's called BANCON. Anybody attend BANCON? So yeah, it's a subfield. It's related to my program, which is related to motor control. In this area, that 20 years ago, there's a conference in 1996 in Deer Creek, Ohio, that basically focused on biomechanical methodology, and it's really a lot of biomedical engineering, biomechanics, and interested in neural control movement. Mainly these are work done mainly in humans. It was a very small subset of few, and starting to grow. And so 20 years later, they wanted to see whether that, how capacities grows, and it's just good as a review. So the meeting was held last year again. So I was asked to give a talk to go back to look at history, because I was attendee 20 years ago as a postdoc. And then, of course, for the last 16 years, I'm running this program, which practically supported this area of research at NIH. So I went back and looked at that and did some analysis. Now, you don't have to look at a detail, just look at it, the take-home message. Basically, we look at it, attendees 20 years ago and attendees last year, and look at how many applications they submitted at NIH and how how successful they are. And of course, this is a very narrow-minded analysis because 20 years ago, the community is very small. The attendees are quite comprehensive, representing that view. But last year, it was really a fraction of what we had of the whole field. But still, you see that collectively, there's a increase after that meeting, and there's a huge peak, plateau over there. And the color plot was really where this application goes to. You can see that they didn't go to NIBIB, right? So when these are biomechanics and looking at kinematic analysis of all the movement and that sort of thing. So it's very engineering type of research. So then my time up or? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. So, and then we're trying to analyze what sources, what kind of a driving force to facilitate this growth. And obviously, you look at, say, well, we're not happy with, with how the human movement is being analyzed, and we have a strong intellectual influence coming from European at that time, and the booming of neuroscience, ACC publication of neuroscience really kicked off in the early 90s. But I think that critically is really your discipline contributed to these two factors. Really, the ever-increasing computing power in the early 90s, mid-90s, and the ubiquitous use of personal computer and BICOM and motion capture equipment, all this. So technology is really driving behind this. But if you look at it infrastructure-wise, there's also things contributing to this because neuroscience field generate a lot of PhDs, and these are having engineering background, physics background. They go into these directions. And then there's emerging, say, the BME early 90s with the Whitaker Foundation funding BME programs. And the upgrading of clinical departments like PTOT, and they have, from master to DPT, and they have design. So these synergistic factors contribute to what we call biomechanical study of human movement, and then we also contribute to places like Cleveland, Palo Alto, VA, and all those. Chicago, SMPP and Rehab Institute of Chicago. And then also the major factor is that we have a doubling of NIH budget during those time. And there are other things I wanted to list here, including the establishment of NIBIB, NIAA, and a bunch of other institutes during that time. So it takes a village. It takes village to really complementary, sometimes with some overlapping, to have this research capacity. So it's not really by special initiative. It is really engineers see these opportunity ready to take advantage of what we call the investigator-initiated peer review process. And now, so how did that happen? How did it make the inroad into NIH to get the R01s funded? I think that one of the things is that you can see the Center for Scientific Review responded by initially, as you can see from this chart, in the mid-90s, we don't even have a study section to deal with these applications. We have that we call SEP, the Special Emphasis Panel. They are not chartered standing panel, but then by 1999, we have some panels say, your critical mass is not big enough. Let's merge you with geriatric. So you see the GRM, geriatric and rehab medicine, it was in 99 to 2003. And then from 2005, the application increased so much, we actually set up 3 additional additional review panel. We had a sensory motor integration. We have, we call it MFSR, is motor function and speech rehabilitation. And then also we have MRS, is called medical rehabilitation science. So the review panel is in response to the increase of the application numbers. So the number really dictate how these new field got really, grows in a tremendous fashion. So you can see that these are the grants goes to which institute, but you can see the total number that's submitted to NIH increased significantly starting from 2003. So the take-home message is really number matters. And the number is really in your hand. So you really don't have to wait for NIH, say, a specific area of science that need engineering, whatever. You can create your own opportunity and initiative, and driven by science and your curious mind. So this is what I would like to emphasize. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Dafan. So now we will go to our PIs, and why don't we do ladies first and have Simone talk first.
Hi, I'm Simone. I work at Stanford University, so I'm really happy to be here and tell you a little bit about what my stage of my career is. I was very fortunate to be funded with a K99 Award, and you've just heard a lot about it, so I can tell you more if you have any questions later. So originally I was a pure engineer, so I didn't do any biomedical research, and when I joined Stanford as a postdoc, I transitioned to biomedical research. So it has been really interesting, and it's really exciting to be funded by the NIH now, since it's so medically oriented. So I work in MRI engineering. I build hardware for MRI scanners. In particular, that's for high-field MRI, so 7 Tesla scanners, and do a lot of different things. I don't have to go into detail, I think, but if you want to know anything about this, please feel free to ask. And then during my postdoc, I was made aware of the K99 Award, and I just thought, oh, I can never get this award. I'm not good enough. This will never happen. But somehow I tried, and now I'm here. So I think I want to tell all of you, don't ever think you cannot do something. Give it a try and believe in yourself. It is possible. So I'm currently in my first year of the K99 Award. It's I started in June, and it's the mentored phase is 2 years long, and then there's a 3-year independent phase that I hopefully achieve. So and we were asked to think of 3 tips or insights to share. I'm not necessarily advanced enough to have the perspective of a reviewer or participant of a panel, so I will maybe say a few things of what I did to write my grant. So as Christine already mentioned, it's really important that you call your program officer. I at first did not do that. So that resulted in a little bit of confusion, and I could have saved a lot of time and trouble. So overall, it took almost 2 years to get my grant, and I think if you do the right things, it might be a little bit easier. It's really, really important that you call them. I know it's very daunting. When I actually did call, I was really nervous, but they're really nice people, and they're there to help you. So they really, I think you can even send your specific aims page, things like that, and they will tell you how to write that and so on. There's also a lot of resources. I think it's called All About Grants, and one of you showed this. It shows you really nicely how to write your specific aims page, what sentence should say what, and so on and forth. Meet with people who have written grants before, especially K99 grants that were successful, but also faculty members, because that's what they do every day. I would also almost call them professional writers, because it's really a lot of their work is grant writing. And there, at least at Stanford, but I'm sure at many universities, there are resources like we have academic chats, grant writing workshops, and so on. So really go and check that out. Even if you're an introvert, talk to people, network, and set aside a lot of time for this, so prepare it well. I think you should take into account that it might require a resubmission for the K99, you have 2 chances. So in most cases, I think it takes the second one to be successful, and that takes a lot of time. So talk to the program officer on what the best dates are to stay within your 4-year time limit and so on and forth. This is really important. Yeah, and then most of all, I think I want to say don't give up. Even if you don't get it, don't worry. You have written a grant. It was a lot of work, and you can be better at the next one because you learned how this all works. And so I think persistence is really what you need, but you already know that if you work in academia. I think that's most of what I want to say. I don't know if you can ask me a lot of things later. There's a lot that I can say, but mostly believe in yourself. You can get there. For me, it seemed like I would never never be able to do this, and now I'm so thankful, and I'm looking forward to a really beautiful faculty career, and I couldn't be happier. So so feel free to ask me any questions. If you're too shy to ask today, you can email me. You just Google my name in Stanford, you'll find my email address. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Simone. Why don't we move to Lonnie?
So I'm Lonnie Shea. I'm the chair of Biomedical Engineering at the University of Michigan. I'm fortunate. I'm a huge fan of NIBIB. I would love to see it have as much money as NINDS, because I think there's so much opportunity for what bioengineering can really contribute. A little bit about my history in terms of this. For some of you that are getting started, I'll say that I think it took me to my 4th or 5th year to get my first R01, and lots of failed submissions up until that point. I think the grant writer's guide that sort of tells you what each sentence should say and different sections was a really key component to getting there. In addition to talking to your program officer, one of the major considerations that you should have is what is the study section that will be reviewing the proposal, because really the institutes are really going by what their recommendations are, and they're actually reading the grant and providing comments. I currently sit on the BMBI study section, the biomaterials and biointerfaces, and having worked in the area of regenerative medicine, gene and drug delivery for almost 20 years now, it's still challenging to have a grant funded by these groups. They're very diverse. I think within biomedical engineering, you're seeing proposals that are coming in, for example, that are going to have immunoengineering, in which you need biomaterials expertise, and you also need immunology expertise. And cutting across disciplines like that is inherently challenging. I think the one way that I have tried to manage that is I'm currently co-PI on 5 R01s, and on a program project, I'm a PI in one of the projects. And you can see the reason I mentioned that is simply because I'm not sole PI in any one of them, and it's really a partnership with someone that's a specialist in immunology, or a specialist in reproductive biology, or a specialist in cancer. And that really provides that field-specific expertise or the biological perspective that really complements the engineering. And I think it is, even at the level of a K99, you're looking to build that team of expertise that says that you can really accomplish the goals of the project. That's really pushing the boundaries on all aspects of terms of what you're proposing to do. And then I think in terms of to allow just to get to the question component, I'll just wrap up by saying there's also a new recent tool that you can actually type in your title and abstract into the NIH web pages, and it will actually make recommendations for study sections for you that I think is actually a very valuable tool to consider using. And I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions as we go forward.
Thank you. Very interesting insights. My experience and relationship with NIH has been a long one. I started in 1983, and I've been very, very lucky to have continuous funding up up to now. So it's been 30 plus 5 years or so. So it's been a love and hate relationship. Love it when I get the grants and hate when I don't get them. Sure. And it's been a continuous struggle to renew those grants. So I have several tips for give you. First one is to think big. And this is the own initiative there. You create your own career. Basically, you can come up with an idea, and the title of the grant should reflect how big the idea is, so that you can think yourself working a renewal 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. It's just what I've done, surprisingly. But you have to start with a big idea. If you start with a small idea, then it won't work. You just fizzle out, I guess, after a while. Another big one is that I've learned is that you need to have, to be successful, maybe 2 areas of research that are related, but not quite. So you have 2 lines of grants that are in parallel. You do some work on one, and if this one stops, then you can still continue on the other one. And I found that to be extremely helpful. Another one that's really important is focus. Stay down in these areas. Don't try to go on tangents. To pick the easy projects where you have a paper for sure, but in the end, it's not really going to continue, so why bother? So focus, because that's where you establish a strong link with your colleagues. And they will know you as the expert in that area, and they will look up to work with you. So that I would suggest that. And another big one I've learned is just don't take failure personally. I mean, panels are panels. There are 3 guys and three reviewers look at your proposal, and sometimes, things don't work out. They don't agree with you. It's life. I've been on these panels, and every time I come back from the study sections, lately I just finished a 4-year term on the K99s at NIH, the F30s and all that. Every time I'm thinking about this is working. The system is working. This is probably the best system in the world that we have in the US. And every time my grants doesn't get funded, I don't think the same way, okay? You see, and then I go back and I'm still thinking, yeah, this is still the best system. So panels, it's just, sometimes I'm still learning. In other words, I've been doing this for, like I said, 25 years, and I'm still learning how to write this proposal. I'm still trying to improve. I just submitted one a few days ago. Like right now, as we were talking, I'm working on another proposal that's due today in Cleveland at 5 o'clock, which is past the deadline already. So it's a continuous process, and don't take it personally. It's just try it again. You just improve it on it, you answer the reviewers, and eventually, after 3, you'll get it.
Good. Can I comment?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So Dominic and I speak French, petit français. So I understand what he meant. So I interpret a little bit. Yeah. So when he used the word hate, actually I don't mean he really meant hate, right? Yes, if you don't get good score funded, you're frustrated. But as someone from NIH, actually I wanted to say this is don't blame this on NIH because it's a peer review system. So people always say, I'm not happy with NIH. NIH doesn't like it. No, it's a peer review system. So you really should be looking, say, okay, this is not being recognized by peers. Now, not necessarily sometimes these reviewers, 3 reviewers, maybe somehow your science has not been communicated through meetings like this or other conferences to the broader community. You are ready for a big time or whatever. So I think of in a broader way how you communicate with your colleagues to convince them what you do is really important. And the other things, he mentioned about the failure. He didn't really meant to be saying failure. It's really, in my view, it's actually error-enhanced learning. So you guys are engineering, and you really love machine learning. So I think every attempt is error-enhanced learning. That's what I said earlier, that I always believed if you consider getting NIH application funded is just to get money. Actually, that's wrong. Why? This is not DARPA. This is not the foundation. This is not company. This is a peer review process. In fact, there's no place in the world you will get a top expertise, review your grant, give you a feedback in pages without charging you a dime. And think about it. If you have a lawyer critique, you can't. So in my view, is you need to establish, like you said, an area of research or interest, and then you wanted to get a peer input. Now, yes, if getting funded, it's great. But if not, this is really should be an area enhanced learning through whatever career goal you have. And this is the best way you can do it, and it's free.
So we have some questions. Why don't I do a couple first because they wrote it. There's a quick one, maybe Chris can field this one. Is the budget allocated to each institute related to the cost of each disease?
That's a tough question to answer. So we get our appropriations based on congressional justification report that we put into Congress. Congress does themselves tend to allocate funds based on disease. For example, right now there's a lot of money going to the National Institute of Aging for Alzheimer's disease. So some of the money that comes to NIH is definitely directed towards certain diseases. And for a long time it was AIDS, and that has actually decreased a bit. So there's some earmarking, and it seems to be increasing more now than it used to be. But other than that, it's based on the justification for our budgets that we submit to Congress.
Okay, great.
And
thanks.
for NINDS, we are responsible for anywhere between 400 to 600 disease. There's no way we will have a tabulating calculation on how much each disease has. So there is no such things in general, even though there are special fiscal allocations for particular, like Chris mentioned. But I think I would like to address it with one thing. This is how I interact with you folks from engineering, and this is a very common question. And sorry, I have to say that this is the way I responded. It's never healthy to think that way, to go after money. Actually, it always makes you to be not as competitive. Rather, you should be focusing on what kind of a science that you feel like you're confident and solid enough, and whatever fit, whatever disease, and that should be based on science.
Great. We'll do one more question here. And we are lucky to have a number of questions, and time is running short, so I'll try to answer this myself, and so I will make it short. I heard that the program directors are very busy and they don't have time to review my Ames page. So it's true, program directors are very busy. We are in a hiring freeze also. But at least for my colleagues at NIBIB, I can say that we always get back to you on your specific Ames page. And sometimes, like if you want to have a phone call and come to us without any specific ideas and just want to chat, maybe we don't have time for that. But if you send us a specific Ames page where you have really laid down your thoughts, we really make time for that. So.
This worked a minute ago.
It's open.
And if you contact a program director and they don't answer you, contact them again. And if they don't answer you, contact them again.
Sure. That's right. And especially if you're on the more junior end of the spectrum, include your CV so we see what your background is and whether the work makes sense for you.
And I'm guessing like 3 months out from the deadline is the appropriate time to be doing it?
Definitely a week is a bad time, so yeah. And that also reflects poorly on you if you're like really trying to do this in a week. It's not going to work.
But I hope that's not the only one you ask, right? And in fact, it should be not as important one to ask. Why? I responded in a way that don't take my words too seriously. Why? I'm not part of the review system. How could I be ensured that I give you feedback is the right one? So I think this needs to be taken in a way objectively. Yes, contact the PO, discuss with the PO. In what format? I'm not really say yes or no, high and low on your aims. I would say this is very NIDS appropriate. This is an important question. It looks like it may fit with that panel more than this panel. You know, I'm not sure whether this question is significant, but you know, it's up to you. But I would never wordsmith your aims or say, you know, so I may, you know, refer you to another colleague, say, he probably knows this better or whatever. I think our deliberation has to be careful because we are not part of review. I could very easily misguided you. How could I know? So I think you need to talk to people like experienced grantees that in real peer to get a feedback. That's my personal perspective, and that everybody function in a very different way.
Yeah, I completely agree. We don't give out scientific advice, but we can use your specific aims to determine whether it's a good fit for the Institute, whether it's a priority for the Institute, and what the best study section is for review.
That's why grantome.com is so good. It's just so good. If you use filter, if you know exactly who you're going to talk to. And if you call this person PO, and if you know another person related actually as well, and then you will find a peer from this list. The guy got funded in a very similar topic. So Grantome really help you resolve that. And we shouldn't have this discussion actually, you know, once you find out how powerful it is.
Okay. Well, we have a question for Simone. For contacting your PO, did you arrange the schedule for the phone conversation via email, or can you call directly the PO?
I would suggest to email first, and they'll probably tell you when they have time. It's the better way to proceed. Sorry.
Can I also add? I'm sorry, I have too many things to add. When you write email, just put a phone number underneath. Sometimes I read email when I was on my road, and when I see the phone number, I immediately call afraid of having this email being embedded by something that was completely out of my. So without the phone number, without something, I will have to go back. And these days, it's so hard, takes so many emails to actually to tell your assistant to schedule a phone, and all these things. It probably just a very straightforward 5 minutes phone call to answer your question, and sometimes it may not be appropriate to give it in written form. Sometimes we want to just chat very quickly. So it would be, you know, if I call you not is good time to talk, we can certainly, you know, immediately say, let's talk about tomorrow. You know, these days it's just so mobile. Every one of us, it's just schedule a call. It takes more time than the call itself.
Well, I guess this is a bit of a personal preference between POs. I would rather be approached first for a time to call.
Sure, I understand.
So do I need a hypothesis in my aims for a K award or for an R21 award? For K awards, the research is similar. Whatever guides the appropriateness of K award research is the same as for research grants. And for NIBIB, we don't require hypothesis-driven work. We do design-driven work as well. But in other ICs, that's a requirement. You want to comment?
It depends. I mean, depending on the mechanism. I mean, in this case, probably it would be good to send a few aims to say which mechanism this would be good. And then maybe, you know, check with PO, just like Chris said. If you're in doubt in terms of mechanistically.
I'll add, as being on a panel, I don't see many proposals being funded that are technology-centric only. There usually has to be a question of some sort that's being addressed and what you're going to learn from the study. And it's not a requirement of the R21 or whatever. It's something that many reviewers will impose themselves. What's the new knowledge that's going to be learned from this is often a question that you will hear by people in a critique. So it's outside of that, it really falls to reviewers and sometimes their own personal expectations. And they can be reminded this proposal doesn't need preliminary data, and that definitely does happen, but you still have to deal with what the reviewer is thinking, and many times they're wanting to know, well, what's the hypothesis for this? So.
I might add that as a reviewer, also first thing I look is for the hypothesis. Not only is there one, but is it clearly stated? Is it testable? And what are the statistics that are going to show whether it's true or not?
I would say you at least need to identify a clinical need for whatever technology you're developing. We get a lot of really cool bioengineering applications that turn out to have no clinical need, and so they get killed in review.
But as long as you have a clinical need, you don't have to stretch yourself. Sometimes I get applications where it's really the clinical need is there. There's a device or platform that's to be developed, and they're forcing themselves into putting it into a hypothesis, like the hypothesis that I can measure blah, blah, blah with this. So you don't have to do that. It can be just the technology is the driving force. So is it better to have a small idea that is my own or collaborate on a team project where my part is not most important? It's a bit open-ended.
I would say that you need both. I think it's nothing wrong with working with somebody else on a smaller project, but also you need to establish your own ideas and your own driven projects. At the 10-year review, I think that's something that's been looked at. But mostly what the universities want is your ability to get funding. So if you have funding as a collaborator, that's the number one. But also from your own career point of view, I think you want to have your own grants and your own ideas.
Yeah. And I'll just reiterate the point that was mentioned earlier. You need a portfolio. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And so work on that breadth of things, again, centered around a core of what you can do and what you can do uniquely and what's your competitive advantage, but how it can be connected with other people. This conversation I have with my young faculty.
And a lot of questions we get at NIH or at NIBIB is from engineers is, can I submit as a PI, or do I really need a clinician to be the PI? And the answer is no, you can, if it's mainly your project, you submit as the PI. There's not going to be any scrutiny in peer review about whether, you're a MD or a PhD. It's all going to be about where does the majority of the expertise lie in the PI and the proposed research.
And I would really want to echo that. In fact, the whole reason I agreed to Dr. Seton to come here to complement Chris and Zeynep's talk, because this is really NIBIB's home professional. I consistently find there is a system problem, is that when I'm dealing with BME folks coming to seek NIH funding, there is a mindset somehow just couldn't get out of their engineering mind. So they seem to be burdened by the way they are an engineer. What about if you just shed that and think about, I am also a scientist. I'm an engineer, happen to be interested in scientific question or clinical question, whatever. And so, you know, a lot of people do that. In fact, I know people, PhD PTs that are now BME faculty at Northwestern, and he considers himself an engineer. So I think it really depending on the question you are interested in. Don't try to say, okay, I try to help you as if, you know, you use my engineering skill to apply something, solve the clinical problems. No, you need to create your own question, scientific question. You happen to be an engineer. And now you're seeking NIH funding. It is actually, the money is many 100 or 10 times more than what your professional home institute has. Your mindset should be, I'm going after the whole NIH money. That's what I think that you're going to make really, you know. So I didn't elaborate. In my slides, I think the whole point I try to emphasize the success of that community is representation identity. They create a significant critical mass of representation, and they create their own identity that the CSR has say, we need to have a panel that has a theme on that. You need to create that identity, scientific identity, beyond your engineering background. So.
Okay, so we're over time, but if people don't mind staying in for a little bit, we have 3 more questions. And I'm not sure who this is for, but it says, when you say big idea, can you please elaborate a bit? Examples can be very helpful. Who mentioned big idea?
I mentioned it, yeah. I mentioned this, and I realized this after the fact that I'm trying to renew. I say I get an R1, and I'm trying to renew it, and I cannot fit my new ideas to renew it in the context where the original R1 was stated. So that means that when you start this R1, think beyond this just 1 or 2 ideas you might have you want to write down. Think about, where would I go, say, 5 years from now? And then if that's successful, where do I go 15 years from? This is big, right? 15 years, it's a long time. And yet these grants are 5 years old. I mean, 5 years long, right? So you can easily think about what's going to happen 5 years from now. And so it forces you to think big. It forces you to have a big outlook on the field as a whole. And it forces you to do what Dr. Chen says, to come up with your own initiative instead of having someone at NIH tell you, you need to work on the autonomic nervous system now, right? You got your own ideas. So for an example, I have a long-standing R1 from NINDS. I have several, but one of them is detection and control of seizures in bioelectrical stimulation, something like that. This is broad, and I've been able to continue on this line of research for 4 or 5 cycles. And I have another one on neurointerfacing, and it's neurointerfacing with the nervous system, so that's also very broad. And you can, so it needs to be a bit more specific, but also pretty broad. So, but the idea is to think big, because it forces you to look down on a big field.
Okay.
In our program language, we call this PI as an idea of his own program, not project. Actually, we want every R1 grantee to be having a program, not just project.
Okay. All right. Next question. You encourage us to volunteer in the review panels to learn the dynamics better for a better application. On the other hand, inexperienced reviewers might cause the applicants to hate the NIH because of unjustified reviews. How do you compensate that? So I can say that you can't just become a reviewer. There are checks. First of all, you have to be a faculty member, I believe at least at the assistant professor level. And we definitely look at your publications and make sure that you're an appropriate reviewer for the panel or the project.
I'll add as well that you're oftentimes in the panels that I'm on, if there's someone that's new, they will only have 4 proposals instead of the normal 8 to 10. And so you can devote a little bit more time to it than others. And then they are stating their comments just as everyone else is. And so you're not locked into your comments forever. You can go back and change that based on feedback that you hear from the panel. So it's not only your comments, and the whole idea of having discussion as a group is to develop a consensus about what the panel wants to recommend for the proposal. And so therefore you shouldn't feel discouraged about putting your ideas out there. Actually embrace the idea of you're putting the ideas out there. And if someone corrects you and says, Al, actually that's not an accurate statement, there's a misperception, that's great. You take it out of your comment and review and then can provide a corrected one, and then you can amend how you view the proposal. So people's scores will change from what you initially submit to then what the final score is.
Okay.
By the way, there is a video on NIH website, and I just search for it. It has a mock review process. You can sort of watch it in action. It's actually very helpful.
Right. So the last question we have, I'm looking to apply for a phase 1 SBIR grant to conduct a class 2 medical device clinical pilot study. Would this be considered a clinical trial in the grant, even though there is no validation and the study is simply for data acquisition purposes? There's a little bit too little information here, I think, but
I would be happy to talk to you individually.
right,
You know.
right.
Okay, yeah.
The NIH website now has a whole section on clinical trials and all the new policies, and there are 4 questions that you have to answer to determine if your study is a clinical trial. And if the answer is yes to any of the 4 questions, then it's now considered a clinical trial.
Not any, all. Right?
No, I thought it was any one that has an answer of yes.
No,
No,
all, I
should
think. All.
Yeah.
All?
Yeah. It's an evolving process. It's a policy that is evolving. I think none of us will probably have the same language as how we perceive it. So I have a significant part of my portfolio being affected. It's really a policy issue, but I think we don't want you to be misguided, and you certainly have to heed to those policy. But let me just deal with that individually. It may not be that critical. As I said, next year may not be the same.
And again, this is actually one more point where you would contact the program director. This is going to be a very, I think, tricky issue to get clear about until everything settles. So you really need to contact the program director. Any other questions in the audience? Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe that it does. I mean, I think from the other perspective is that having them as a consultant, collaborator, co-I, just provides that breadth of expertise that this is someone I can call on to make sure that the right things happen. And I don't think that is viewed as a negative in any way.
And it also depends on what the work requires. If your part is the main part and that person makes sense to be a collaborator rather than a multi-PI, then that would be fine.
But I think if you're co-I with an investigator that's, and you're a new investigator, and you're a co-I with an investigator that's not a new investigator, then you lose your new investigator status.
This is not, one size fits all kind of a question and answer. It all depends. I think we heard from one of our grantees, actually, he said he played a role that as a, whatever, in other people's grant. So I think one, which really raised a very interesting topic for this audience, and you need to define your role, especially as an engineer. It's not really scientist. In what role in this whole enterprise you want to play, and depending on your expertise in various ways. So I think that ultimately you want to get your research to be supported. You cannot say, I lose that status and never wanted to get funded. So I think there is some, it has to be context dependent.
Okay, yes?
Yeah, I have a question about the change of the NIH. I heard about going to set up a phone system to limit the award numbers. Do you have any update about that? I heard about 21 phones, which is limitation, and they will count
Yeah.
the R1.
That's been set aside. That's not happening.
It's not happening.
But I heard next year.
So that policy discussion is halted, yes. However, the discussion about how to, have a fair share, whatever, support, I think that the spirit is trying to support young, new generation of investigators. Not necessarily young. I think that spirit is always there. And through which way, whether we count the beings or whether we look at how that, whether the best science is being supported, there's internal discussion. Each institute has its own policy, and it's all being vetted through their council. But as far as the general NIH-wide called GSIs or whatever, that it's been, it's been killed and it's not moving forward. That's a very engineering way. They have an equation, they say, right? Yeah, you can see how engineering principle is being wrongly applied.
Yeah, that was kind of released to all the scientific community, and there was a lot of opposition to it for many reasons. And so NIH has rethunk it, and now we're calling the investigators early established investigators, and there's going to be some budget goal that we will spend on early stage investigators. A little bit of it started this fiscal year, but it started so late in the fiscal year that there wasn't much we could do about it, but we did whatever we could. Like our institute gave out bridge awards to people so that if they were early established investigators, they could at least get another year of funding to get them to resubmit their application. But next year, it's going to be, the different institutes will be using a variety of different approaches to providing, more funding for early established investigators. And there's NIH overall has a dollar amount in mind for how much will be spent in that area.
And so you can see the mentality, that this whole enterprise, what we call it R1's renewable. For NIH, if we have given R1 support a research program, not a project, right? R1, it's really, we actually made an investment. It would be a shame that that investment got disrupted, not getting renewed. It's our interest to actually having you renewed successfully, because we invested in you 5 years. So you can see that desire to keep the science running in the best interest of science and have the best interest, best performed scientists to be supported by continued support.
Another question about award of
we never define, it's you define peer review. Remember, let me emphasize that question very shortly. To kick the ball to your court. It's peer review. Okay, we don't define, it's you define how successful, in your eye, your colleagues, doing well or not well, right? We certainly can come up with the metrics, whether NIBIB or NINDS internally, but it's peer review actually give the score.
If there are no other questions, I want to thank you all for coming and for a lively discussion, and let's thank the speakers one more time.